Hello and welcome back again to your IBS answer portal. Today's video is A-106. Now you are going to finally get to find out how your treatment and eventual cure works. Because there's so much material, I decided I'm going to do this in two parts. This first part is a very interesting part. And if you had looked at the thumbnail photograph, you're going to get a clue into why humans develop irritable bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis, and inflammatory bowel disease. If you notice, that thumbnail photograph was of dogs waiting to use a treat to relieve themselves. And if you saw the caption, it said, "Why is this not an issue for dogs if you think about irritable bowel syndrome?" Simple, because they don't think about it and they don't get it. The question is, why doesn't a dog get irritable bowel syndrome? The real truth of the matter is diet. If you own a dog or you know anything about dogs, think for a moment. Does your dog eat ice cream sundaes, candy, cake, cookies? I could go on and on. Peaches, cherries, avocados, watermelons. Under normal conditions, even in the human population, that doesn't present the problem. However, medical conditions can arise for a number of reasons, namely excess amounts, abusive amounts can exacerbate a situation. This is your irritable bowel syndrome. Initially, when you sustain an injury to your brush border, the lining of your small intestine, you're set up for possible irritable bowel syndrome. There's no magic formula that X number of days versus the exposure to those complex sugars, what we call FODMAPs. That's fermentable oligopolysaccharides, disaccharides, and polyols. Those are various types of sugars that exist in watermelon, cherries, avocados, onions, peaches, and I could go on and on. Apples, apricots, beans. A lot of beans produce gas because of how humans metabolize them. And if you think about it, you will hear all the time, "Oh, but those are good foods. They're healthy for you." Yes, they are. But there's nothing wrong with sugar, ice cream, cake, syrups, candy, if you're not a diabetic. If you are a diabetic and you're not producing insulin, that's murder for a diabetic. Well, the same goes for a person who has irritable bowel syndrome. Do you get the connection? Enzymes versus a hormone, insulin. Now you understand. A diabetic is either deficient in insulin or resistant, that is in type 2 diabetes. And in type 1 diabetes, they are totally deficient. They do not manufacture any insulin. That is their problem. But why didn't medicine or science figure it out? Irritable bowel syndrome is the same thing. Your condition arises from the simple fact you are deficient in or have insignificant amounts of intestinal enzymes. Those are those 6 enzymes. Bear in mind, you also could be deficient in certain other pancreatic enzymes. And as I said in the earlier videos, you produce 26 or more different enzymes to facilitate digestion, metabolism of your foods. But now you know. And think about it. If you own a dog, have a dog, or your dog is not owned by you, but is your partner, a family member, what do you feed your dog? The same food day in and day out. Kibble or canned dog food. You're not giving your dog all those complex carbohydrates, sugars. Dogs eat a lot of meat. They're carnivores, but they don't eat all that excess amount of complex sugars. It even gets worse. Today, American food industry has radically changed. I want you to think about your grandmother. During your grandmother's time, she baked breads, baked cakes, cookies, and what did she use? She used regular old-fashioned flour, and she used yeast. Today, that is not the same case. When you go to bake, you use self-rising flour. You don't even use yeast anymore. And what do they do when they process flour today? They bleach it, destroy it, that there's nothing left in it. Then when they're done and they're ready to process it, they then add back minerals, vitamins, and gluten. So you think gluten-free diets are a fad? Not hardly. Gluten is an excessively large molecule that is difficult for humans to digest. Under normal conditions, you eat small amounts of gluten. However, that changed in the last 50 years. Now the food industry has reformulated foods. There are numerous additives. One particularly is gluten. And you wouldn't even believe it, in a simple prescription capsule for antibiotics and other meds, they add gluten to the capsule. You are getting an excessive amount of gluten. So don't let anyone fool you that it's a fad diet. People who have irritable bowel syndrome also have difficulties with gluten. And I will continue to explain this as we get into treatment in Part B of this A-106. You're going to start to figure it out and understand. So I'm going to conclude with this one now. I wanted you to observe and see, based on that funny photograph of all those dogs waiting for that tree. Trust me, if it were humans and some of those people in that line had irritable bowel syndrome, they wouldn't be so orderly sitting there and waiting. So stay tuned for Part B, and we'll get into the important aspects of your treatment. It works, and you just got to study and understand what I'm explaining to you. So please stay tuned for Part B, and thanks for listening. You're going to be cured.